Hi, I'm Steve Harper, and welcome back to our Leadership as a Contact Sport series. We are using this series as an opportunity to feature some of the greatest school district leaders in the country. And I am joined today by someone that I think you are absolutely going to love. Dr. Bhavna Sharma-Lewis is joining us today. She is the superintendent of Diamond Lake District 76 in Mundelein, Illinois. Dr. Sharma Lewis is also an adjunct professor at Concordia University in Chicago. And I am so excited to have her because Dr. Sharma Lewis speaks on leadership. She has been invited to many conferences. She gets an opportunity to share her very unique approach to what she has done as a successful superintendent now for three different districts. She is a lightning rod, and I can't wait to dig into this topic with her because I think she's going to shed some really amazing light on what it takes to be a good school district leader. This series is really designed to focus our energy and our effort towards understanding school district leadership from a small district all the way to a large district and figure out what it takes to be a successful leader in this profession. We are so grateful to have our supporting sponsors, Ripple Central and Owner Insight, be a part of this. I actually own both companies, and it is an honor of a lifetime to meet these leaders and have an opportunity to have these interviews with them. And today is going to be a great, great session with Dr. Sharma Lewis. So let's dive right in. Dr. Sharma Lewis, thank you so much for joining us for Leadership as a Contact Sport. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
I am super excited. I was saying in your introduction that when I first identified you as someone that I was hoping to get to agree to do this series, I did not realize how powerful you are as not only a superintendent, but as a motivational speaker and just how committed you are to being such a great leader. So we are so honored to have you.
Well, thank you so much. I'm honored, for that introduction, and I appreciate all your kindness, and I'm humbled by it. So
Oh,
thank you,
well,
Steve.
yeah, you're welcome anytime. I am super excited to dig into this conversation. As I mentioned to you, leadership is a contact sport. We are trying to feature school district leaders that are actually stepping outside of the norm and really doing leadership from a different perspective. And one of the areas I'd like to start with is, what do you wish you had known when you first came into leadership that you now know, that you wish the younger version of your leadership journey, you had been informed, had that experience or that understanding?
That's a great question. And I just did kind of a closing keynote for my state organization about that, about just like three lessons. But I think the number one lesson that I've learned is that everybody has a story.
Yeah.
And we should stop and get to know that person's story before we pass judgment. And that could be about our students, that could be about our staff, that could be about the board or community members. Um, and even and most importantly too, about our colleagues. I think we're very quick to judge how people look, how people act, even just what they smell like, their aura, all of that. We just
Yeah.
immediately make judgments
Yep.
about people and create our own story in our mind. And a lot of the times it's not positive. So I think just always assuming good intent and knowing that everybody has a story and not to judge and take a step back, get to know people, get to know their story, understand where they're coming from, and maybe know where their differences lie and how we can best support and elevate them in whatever role that we're interacting with them, whether we're their superintendent, we're their teacher, there are board members, a community member, whatever that is, or a colleague who needs support. I think just knowing that everyone has a story and taking the time to get to know people's story before judging.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point. What were the particular challenges as you got into leadership that you experienced as you were kind of coming in, where that knowing that now you kind of wish you may have done things a little bit differently. I find that often with a lot of, especially maybe first or kind of first or second level positions that come into a leadership role, they're often struggling to feel confident about themselves. So they put on these airs and kind of exude this false confidence or, hey, I'm in the leadership role now and I'm in control. What were some of the challenges for you as you took on that first leadership role for in a school?
I think My biggest challenge came from other women,
Yeah.
and men too, but
Yeah.
mostly women. I think people assume, again, not knowing people's story, that you woke up like this, right? Like that everything's been handed to you.
Yep. How
You
lucky
just
you are. Yeah.
Yes, yes, right? Like not knowing just my story in the sense. And so I think that's probably the biggest challenge that I've had to overcome is that people just assume I am a certain way because of the life that I've lead. And I think it came initially on my journey where in my second superintendency I was fired because of honestly because of some mean girl stuff, jealousy,
Mm.
intimidation, um, harassment and hostility that they have created. And it all started because, of a woman who got into power who didn't hire me and didn't
Oh,
like the way that I looked, didn't like the fact that, I'm from an Indian descent, didn't like the fact that I was younger than her, didn't like the fact that I had a younger family, didn't like the fact that I was making more money than her. And so literally turned the entire board in the district and made my life a living nightmare. And
oh,
I think too, as I was going through it, other women judged and assumed that all of those things were true, that I was difficult to get along with, that maybe I wasn't competent, that I was emotional, and men too. Like I said, I mean, it came from both ways, but I think that was probably one of the biggest things is that when I started sharing my story of guess what, and this was like 5 or 6 years later of this is what happened to me. And when the board falls out of love with you, you can rebuild and rebrand yourself, which is what I've done in the past 10 years. But it wasn't without a lot of blood, sweat, and equity. And I
yeah.
think people assume because of the house that you live in, or you look a certain way, or you dress a certain way, we're just our women are just harsh critics.
Yeah.
And I had to work very hard at what I have. My husband and I have been married for 27 years. We've lived a very public life. He is an elected official, and that always wasn't easy to get him to that elected official standpoint. We had 10 years of public humility and, I was going to say scrutiny
Yep.
because of our public, our politics or whatever party he
Sure.
was in. They assumed I'm that party. They assumed I vote that way. So I think, it's just, they said he hates women. They say he's not for women's health care. They say he's a racist. And I think all of the combating those things in the public eye, making sure that my children felt safe, loved, and supported going through all of that while maintaining my career, and also being a majority breadwinner for a long time while he was pursuing his start in politics. So there's just a lot of that. I think that I've had to overcome. And as I've shared my story, people have started becoming more empathetic and understanding. But initially, it's like I said, getting over that. Oh, she's probably always been like this.
Yeah. Well, I mean, where does the courage to take that on come from? Was that is that something you've always had, or is that something you had to learn to develop as you went through some of these trials and tribulations?
I think the more authentic that I became and the more vulnerable I became, I think people just respected that and appreciated that. And I was raised very much like you don't share, right? You don't
Yep.
share your dirty laundry out there with the public or with anybody outside of family. So I was always very cautious about what I put out there. And I've learned that if you don't tell your story, people will make up their own story to tell about you.
Yep. Yeah.
So, I just decided to say, you know what? No more. I didn't want the next chapter. I've been a superintendent for 15 years. So, in my second superintendency, years 4 and 5, that's when I was going through that very tumultuous situation where the board had a very different vision and direction from me. And then eventually I was let go year 5. So the past 10 years, I've been a superintendent in Diamond Lake. And I said to myself, I didn't want to be known for the next part of my career as the person who got fired or the person who was emotional or the person who didn't get along with her, his or her board. I wanted to write that next chapter, and I wanted it to be my story, that
Yeah.
I could rebuild and rebrand myself. I was able to keep my family intact and make sure I supported my husband and was that partner for him and helped him get elected, got my kids into college and being able to support and pay for all of that. And just staying as strong as a family unit and not forgetting our family values. And I think those are the things that were really important to me personally. And I thought, and I experienced the more that I talked about them and shared my hardships and struggles, the more I think compassion and support and respect that I received from my colleagues and just the public in general.
Yeah, I would tell you in doing some of the research for this interview, I mean, you are loved. I mean, you are a valued superintendent for your school district, and I know at some point you intend to retire, and I think that you have made that district a better place than when you found it. And so I think that, you and I talked about offline about legacy. That's what good leadership really is. And you clearly have done that. I'm curious what advice you would give, because we know, there's there's prejudgment and there's competitive environments everywhere, but especially in education. And I just recently talked to someone that has just recently taken on a principal role, and they were surprised by the people that they had come into the school system, together. And rather than their what they found felt like were good friends and colleagues, being supportive and encouraging, they actually were sort of surprised at how negative they were towards her promotion. And what advice would you give to somebody that's really dealing with that? You've gone through it, you've experienced it, and you've come out so much better on the other side because of it. But what advice would you give for someone that's experiencing it now, and how to not take it personal, which it is very personal at the time, right?
Well, we go into our jobs as educators, everything is personal to us. Otherwise, we
Yeah,
wouldn't be doing it, right? We
that's
want to
right.
connect with our kids. We want to connect with our families. We want to connect with each other. Um, we take everything, we lead with heart. So I think the advice that I would give again is, get to know people, get to know what their story is, but live the story you want to tell. And I
Yep.
think that was the piece when I was going through my hardships in my second superintendency. I wasn't living the story I wanted to tell. I wasn't taking care of myself. I wasn't home. I was stressed out, not sleeping, not eating well, not exercising. Just there was no self care
Yeah.
or self focus at all. And I said, you know what? Next time it's going to be different.
Yep.
And I think, what is the story that I want people to share about me? And am I living it every single day? And I think, treating people with kindness and being authentic, being on brand all the time. So, whatever that brand is, ours is very much similar. As I shared with you earlier, it's Sparkle On.
Yep.
One of those letters means something. So are you living those core values of your brand, whatever your brand is? And it doesn't have to have a catchy name or a phrase like ours does. But then also culture, like you are the culture and the climate, not only of your family and your friends and your surroundings, but your entire school and district. And so even though people try to bring you down, and we, for 10 years and even to this day, we are going through, a lot of difficult, challenging situations where
Sure.
we have to make changes in leadership, or we have to make changes in personnel, or we have to make difficult decisions that aren't always the most popular. But I think once they know that you are always about being authentic and doing what's right for kids and living your brand every day of those core values, and then making sure that that culture and climate always stays healthy and focused on those kids and the adults, I think people understand that you are doing the right thing, that you're not doing this for something personal or your own gain. It truly is about the organization. And let's be honest, right? Like, we're in a very competitive environment in
Yeah.
schools. People say they're not. Initially, it's like you go into your classroom, you shut the door, and you can teach what you want to teach. But our data is always compared, right? It's out
Yep.
there, it's publicly, third grade scores. Here's what it looks like. Here's what it's broken down by class. Here's our kids that don't speak English, and this is how they're doing compared to their same age peers. These are our kids who have special needs, and this is how they're doing compared to the same age peers. These are kids with diversity and different socioeconomics. And I feel like it's all competitive, it's all public, it's all out there. But I think just being that authentic brand ambassador and focusing on the culture and climate of your school, your classroom, or your district and your community, staying true to who you are, people will eventually end up seeing that.
I love that's excellent advice. I think that that is something that I think is really, really powerful that I want to make sure our audience really pays attention to, because at the end of the day, if you don't tell your story and you don't create your brand, then everybody else will create it for you, right? And a lot of times you're out of that control. And I think one of the things that you hit on is that you have to be proactive and you have to be authentic. You know, you need to know who you want to be and how you want to show up as a leader in the classroom, in leadership within the district, and you need to be true to that. But at the same time, you also don't shy away from communicating, this is who I am and this is why I do what I do, because that actually builds alliance, right? It helps people get to know you, like you said, know your story, and it makes it easier for you to get to know their story, because now you've opened those lines of communication and they get a sense of just how you operate, and that helps them understand, where the rules of engagement are necessary with you, right?
And I think, to your point, being unapologetic about it.
Yeah.
I think, this is the way I am. This is the way that I look. This is the way that I act. It may not be everybody's cup of tea, but you just have to be authentic about it and own it. And I think that's something that I've developed over time. Getting towards the end of my career, I've had a lot of bumps and bruises, a lot of scratches and scrapes, and those have just built resilience. And I realized, you know what, if I'm not true to myself, because that's who I have to go to bed with every night,
Yeah.
um, that'll eat away at you more than what other people think, or how others feel about you. So as long as you are your own best friend, as long as your family, your children, your spouse, they know who you are, they believe in you, and you believe in yourself, I think other people either will come around, or, like I always say, they can sparkle off.
I love that. I love that. Well, and like you said, you may not be everybody's cup of tea. That's, some people like coffee. That's okay. It's not a problem, right?
Absolutely.
Um, when you were going through some of these challenging times, and even as you came through them and do what you do now for your current district, do you surround yourself with a group of other leaders that you use either as sort of your kind of your go-to people when things aren't going right, or the people that will help celebrate things when they are going right? Or do you have a particular group of mentors that you've relied on over the years that have helped you through, navigate and figure out the kind of leader you want to be?
It's so interesting when I was going through, yes, to your question, I was going through that experience, a few years ago with a dissension with the board and very public situation where people were speaking out against me and asking for my resignation. No one really reached out.
Uh,
Who people that I thought would reach out or should reach out or could reach out didn't. And I don't know if it was they didn't know what to say, um, they believed it, so they didn't want, maybe they thought like if they talked to me, then their boards would start hating them.
yeah.
I just but I don't think people, they don't know what they don't know.
Yeah.
So I think what I have done in this next chapter of my life is really try to reach out to people who are struggling or who need support, um, or who need that extra helping hand or that kindness call, whatever that looks like. And really just try to have a really strong network of people that I surround myself. And I speak to that too, of just surrounding yourself with people who celebrate and elevate you, but then are always there, especially, and are loyal to you, especially behind your back. So I have a really strong network. I have a strong network personally. I have a strong network professionally. And that really hasn't wavered in, 15 years. It's always been the same core group people. And there's not a lot of them. But there are people that they don't judge. They're truly authentic and unapologetic themselves, so we can relate. And they're also my mirror.
Yeah.
So if you are saying or doing things that aren't on brand, they're the first ones and quick to say, are you living the Sparkle on brand? Are you being that brand ambassador that you go out there and say you are? And then it really causes me to stop and reflect and say, you know what, you're probably right. I'm not. Or, yes, I am. And this is why. But for the most part, just having those people around you that no matter what will have your back, they're loyal, when you're not looking or when people aren't looking, they're the ones that are going to stick up for you and defend you no matter what. But they're there for you in the bad times, and they celebrate with you in the good times.
Yeah, I love that. You mentioned Sparkle On, so tell us a little bit about that and what you're going to do with that in this next chapter of your career?
So I have a special place in my heart for Diamond Lake. Obviously, I've been there for 10 years now as superintendent, but when I was at a crossroads in my career, and I had one woman knock me down on the previous board, this board from Diamond Lake, the board president was a woman, and she lifted me up. She gave me a chance when no one was going to take a chance on me. I asked her, I said, I can give you the name of the my former board president, but I'm going to tell you she's not going to say good things about me. But I have lots of other references that you can speak to. And she said, "Oh my gosh, I've watched some of those videos. They're absolutely awful. How you survived that and turned yourself around and still stayed on top, as far as getting up every single day and showing up and going to work and being, a supportive wife and mother to your family. Um, that's the kind of resilient leader that we need, a
Yeah.
courageous leader."
Oh, that's awesome.
It was awesome, and I will never forget her, and she changed the trajectory of my life, and I am forever grateful to her and to the Diamond Lake board for taking a chance on me. Because especially when I didn't believe in myself, they believed in me. And they were kind of going through a similar crossroads. Diamond Lake is in the northern suburbs of Illinois. It's about 40 miles north of Chicago.
Okay.
It's a culturally rich and socioeconomically as well as ethnically diverse community. We have about 40% of our students come in speaking English as their second language or third language for that part. We have about 70% of our families are low income. And so I always describe it as 80% of our families pay 20% of the tax base and 20% of the families pay 80% of the tax base. So it's a very, off balance
Yeah.
funded school. But that being said, there's so much to celebrate. But when I first got there, it was kind of the diamond in the rough. Like, it wasn't sparkling, it was dull. People hadn't paid attention to it. The buildings were falling apart. We were cutting programs because the finances were mismanaged. There was a poor culture and climate with staff and with the community and with the board. There was a lack of trust and transparency that was going on with communications. So really, we took like the diamond from Diamond Lake and said, what could we do so that kids and parents and staff and community members and board members could feel proud of their district? So instead of making it a dull diamond, let's make it sparkle. Let's truly polish it up and say, how are we proud of what we're doing here? Let's celebrate our diversity. Let's celebrate our socioeconomic differences. Let's celebrate that we have achievement gaps and challenges. How are we going to do that to bring everybody together? Yes, we passed a referendum 3 years later and we're able to update our buildings with safety and security things and innovative learning spaces. It's the pride of our community. We've opened it up to, many community organizations. We have a great professional development center. And for when I first got there, people would call the middle school Westbrook Middle School just because of where it was
Mhm.
located and what it looked like. So that really kids internalized.
Sure.
And so one of the things we said was the locker room and the gym have to get updated and represent who we are. We have to make it sparkle because that's where our community members come in, our visitors come in, they play our teams, those other kids come in. And we've turned that around in 10 years. And Sparkle On means service, passion, advocacy, respect, kindness, love, equity, opportunity, and nurture. And those are the things that we believe in. Our kids know what that means. Our staff know what that means. We walk down the hallway and say, Sparkle On. I'm sparkling today. My work is sparkling. My outfit's sparkling. My attitude is sparkling. Whatever that is, whatever it means to people. But it's just showing you that no matter what your background is, what your race is, how much money you make, what kind of house you live in, what your first language is, whatever that is, that you have the opportunity to sparkle, and we believe in you.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And you're out speaking on this, right? You obviously you just mentioned earlier that you just did the closing keynote. What is it about that mission and that passion for the Sparkle On approach that you want to share with districts, not just in Illinois, but around the country?
I think, again, everybody has a story, right? To know that story, our kids, our families, our staff come to us with so much responsibility, trauma, emotional issues, there is so much, in the past, I'd say 20 years that our community and our environment and our country has gone through.
Yep.
We're divided.
Yep.
There's trauma, there's mental illness, there's just our families, a lot, some of them are incarcerated, some of them aren't in the country legally. So there's this constant feel of mistrust and fear.
Yeah.
And so I think making us all believe that we're all here in our schools for one thing, and that is to learn and to be the best version of ourselves. And they have to feel that they belong there, that they're safe there, and most importantly, that they're loved there. So I
Yeah.
think if you can get that across, because that's what people will remember, right? When they remember their school experience or their favorite teacher or their favorite educator, it's how we make people feel. And no one asks me anymore what my GPA is. No one asks me even what I majored in or where I went to school, but it's that connection that you feel with people. And your success depends on that, right? These
Yep.
kids come in and they spend the most time with you more than their families. So they have to feel that belonging, safety, and love in order to learn or in order to feel confident. And they're going to carry that with them for the rest of their life.
Absolutely. I'm a byproduct of that. I had a teacher that believed in me in high school. I was definitely headed down a path that was probably not going to be a good one. And he said, "You're too smart and you're too capable," and took me up under his wing and really showed me. And part of the reason I'm an entrepreneur to this day is because of a teacher believing in me. And I remember our principal, and I remember connecting with the superintendent and having that recognition, someone who didn't think they had anything of value in the world and would certainly not be important enough to even be noticed by a superintendent, to have the superintendent actually call me by name and tell me, during a competition that I was in, that how proud he was of me at the time. And those things just they will last you a lifetime. I mean, it has fueled me, and my passion for what I do. It's part of the reason we're doing this series, because the work that you do is so important. And it doesn't matter whether you're a superintendent or you're in the classroom. Leadership is something that you have to it's a messy business, and it's not always easy. And a lot of times you know people struggle to know, how do I up my game to be a better leader? How do I continually show up every day to be the best version of myself for the people that I need to help find the best version of themselves. And that can be tough. And you have clearly done that. And I love the approach, and just the story around the sparkle concept, because it is such a powerful one. I can see, your students and your staff really leaning into that, because that's what you're trying to help them see, that they all have something to offer this world.
Absolutely. And we were forgotten for so long, and just how we have transformed the district into a destination where people want to work, a destination where people want to lead. Our community's proud of it. Our kids are proud of it. We've
That's
become,
awesome.
the best gym, the best locker rooms, flower pots when they walk up. I mean, it's a sense of pride and ownership. This is an
Yep.
extension of their community and their home, and they want to go to school every day, and they
That
want and our staff want to come to work every day. And I think those are things that, to me, are the most valuable, that we can provide the teachers and the students that we serve.
What I love about your story is that, you found a place that believed in you, but you believed in it as well, and that you both came to this to say, we have a job to do here. There is a next level that we can take in this journey, and obviously you get there through great leadership. What do you think the tipping point was for the district to go from where it was to where it is today? What did it take for people to believe in the mission that you were bringing to the table?
Everybody wants hope, right? Everybody wants that light at the end of the tunnel, or the pot of gold at the end of their rainbow.
Yep.
I think that, quote unquote, sells, and people will buy that more than dark and despair.
Yep.
And I think every single person, that was what I heard when I did, kind of like my transitional meetings with everybody. I met with every single staff member. We put a team of, a transition team together. And everything that I heard, 100% of the staff that worked there said, we have our choice to work anywhere that we want to. We're not the highest paid district. but we believe so much in our kids and our community. This is where we want to stay, and we want leadership to help us get there. So
Yeah.
they were looking like, honestly, they were such a unique staff because they weren't complaining about working too much or making those extra phone calls or taking work home with them or reaching out to kids, and maybe buying things for them because they didn't have the resources to get them at home. They wanted to be there. Everyone chose. And to this day, when I have that last interview with the final candidate for the teaching position or the principal position or a district office position, I always say to them, you have a choice to be here, right? Like, there, especially with our educator shortage, you can go anywhere you want. You can go make more money across the street or, down the road from us. But this place will value and appreciate and recognize your hard work. And I think that's where they wanted someone to celebrate that. They
Yeah.
wanted someone to empower them. Our saying, our mission statement is embrace, empower, excel, each child, each day. And that's what we do. We embrace wherever they come from. We make them feel, safe and that they belong and that they're loved. We empower them to their full potential to be the best version that they can be. And they excel. They excel academically, socially, emotionally, physically, psychologically. I mean, those are things, not only our kids, but our adults too. And they have
Yeah.
to feel that when they come in, that people believe in them to be the best version of themselves, regardless of their background, regardless of their story, you know, they can get out there and sparkle on.
Ah, you just gave me chills. I love that. The thing that just, like, came to my mind while you were talking was this phrase, "Here for a reason." They are, you guys show up and do the work that you do because you are there in that role, in that position, because you're here for a reason. You're here to make these kids into more than they may even think possible of themselves. They're here to overcome their economic and challenging circumstances, and they're there to be loved. They're there to be educated, but they're also there to be, this is, like you said, their second home. And I love that. I think that's such a fantastic approach. And it's no wonder why you get the recognition that you do, because you didn't shy away from what had to be like a monumental obstacle to come into and say, okay, we're going to do this. But it sounds like you were blessed with great people that said, hey, we are here for a reason, and we just need a leader like you to take the ball and run with it and help us get to where we need to go.
It was definitely a team effort. Definitely a team effort. I couldn't have done any of this by myself. I always say good leadership is, you can go ahead and steer the ship, but you got to turn around and make sure people are following you. And there was a lot of, let me stop. Let's, think, reflect. How are we doing? Is this too fast, too slow? Are we on the right track? And, bringing people along with you, I think, is truly good leadership, but then also putting systems in place where people feel that they can be successful, they're held accountable, and that there's high standards there.
Yeah, I love that. I could literally talk to you all day because you are so fun to learn from. And I am so appreciative of your time and the expertise that you're sharing. Let me just wrap up with a few questions. What are the three characteristics that you think any good leader should have?
Authenticity, kindness, love.
Ah, I love that. As a leader, how do you suggest people show up when they are faced with adversity or maybe resistance from a school board member or entire school board, when you know the direction you want to go and how you want to be there? What do you suggest to them?
Well, I think if you lead with authenticity, kindness, and love, that's contagious, right?
Yeah.
That's the climate and the culture that you're setting with your board, with your leadership team, with your staff, and with your students and your community. But you also have to know when to hold them and you have to know when to fold them, just like Kenny Rogers says,
Yeah.
right? Like, you know what I mean? You can't make people fall in love with you.
Yeah.
And right. And you can't force it to happen. It's like staying in a bad relationship or a bad marriage. It's just not good
Yep.
for the kids.
Yep.
And they feel it. So, and I was also in a situation where I couldn't walk away, right? I mean, my family was dependent on, my salary and my benefits and, so it wasn't like we're independently rich. I could be like, okay, forget this. They don't like me. I'm going to find somewhere else.
Yeah.
So I get that, right?
Sure.
We all have to work to some degree. But I think too, don't let people compromise who you are, right?
Yeah.
Like be that unapologetically authentic self. And if you lead with authenticity, kindness, and love, people will begin to feel that. And then if it's just not working out and your board or your leadership team aren't aligned with that, then you probably don't want to be there anyway.
Yeah. Ah, golden. That's so, yeah, such good advice. All right. I just want to wrap up with a few Ripple connection questions. And these are questions that just give our audience just a little more sense of who you are as an individual. What did the 7-year-old version of you want to be when you grew up?
A teacher. I always used to play school with my sister, and she laughed at me, and she still to this day. And obviously, 40 some years later, she's like, I always knew you were going to be a strict teacher because you would always tell me to be quiet, and I was the only student in the room.
That's foretelling for sure. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, so a
Um,
teacher.
that's fantastic. I love that. Not shocking, but yeah, I love that answer for sure. If there was an opportunity to put a billboard where everybody could read the message every single day on the way to school or to work, what would your message be for them to read?
Surround yourself with people who inspire you to level up, encourage you to lean in, and celebrate your sparkle on.
That's great. I love that. What would, obviously when you decide to retire, what would be the best thing a colleague or, someone from, your school district leadership team or even your community, what would be the best thing you could hear someone say to you about you?
Well, and Steve, as you know, I'm going to retire at the end of this school year, and
Yep.
I'm just loving every minute of it because it's just kind of like my farewell tour where I'm celebrating every milestone. Um, I think the best thing that anybody could say is that Bhavna or Dr. Sharma-Lewis made our life better because she was in it, whether that's for our kids, for our community, for our board, professionally as staff or as a leadership team. But I am better because Bhavna was in my life.
Yeah. I love that. Well, you and I, like we kind of touched on, you have sparkle on, I have ripple on because that we're so passionate about what we do and how we do it, but everything we do has a consequence, right? So I would love to know when you hear the term ripple effect, what do you think of or what does it mean to you?
I think that your energy and your sparkle are contagious, right? So, excuse me, whatever you put out there, you get back, right?
Yeah.
It either ripples out or ripples back to you.
Yeah.
So you have to decide how to show up every day. Are you going to be that positive ripple? Are you going to be that positive energy? Are you going to be that sparkle on? And so that other people feel it and it's contagious and it makes the world better.
That's beautiful. Last question is what ripple can I look to create for you?
Just continue, I think, to level up and lean in and help others sparkle on. I loved your one quote that you shared, and I've actually shared it out to people when you said, what's one thing or one person that made you smile today?
Yeah.
Just that text that I got from you made me smile. And I said, I've got to pass that on. So
Uh,
that ripple I passed on to the students that I was teaching in my graduate class, to a couple of friends that I shared out, my text with, because it just caused me to stop and think about what went right today, what made me feel good, what made me feel loved. And that's what made me smile.
uh,
And I think that amazing ripple, if you can keep doing that over and over again and spreading your sparkle, you have made the world a better place with your leadership.
I appreciate that more than you could possibly know. And I know that I need to text you then a little more often. Some
Please,
additional
please.
ripples for sure.
I love it. I love it.
Well, the great thing about this series is that I get to meet amazing people like yourself. But the thing is I think you're stuck with me now as a friend. So even when you retire, we're gonna have to find some way to like do some things together for sure. So
Please, please. You can never have too many friends. You
yeah,
can never have a large enough network. So I just appreciate you reaching out to me, believing in me, and connecting with me because it's just been a positive experience for the past few months. And I know we've not really formally met, but I just love the connection. I love the ripple that I feel when I'm with you. And I hope you feel the sparkle too.
Absolutely. I am so grateful to know you, and if there's anything I can do to help support you, and as you're on your farewell tour, if there's anything I can do to help promote the celebration of you, I'm all in. So I'm so grateful for your time, and you're stuck with me as a friend. So there you go.
I love it. Well, the feeling is mutual. So thank you again for your
Thank
time
you.
today and for reaching out to me. And I look forward to staying in touch.
Absolutely. And as I like to say with everybody, ripple on and
Sparkle
sparkle
on
on.
and sparkle on. Thank you so much.
Excellent.